The president nominated me because I have policy views that I suppose that he liked. If I'm confirmed to this role, I will act independently, as the Federal Reserve always does, based on my own personal analysis of economic data, my own personal analysis of the effects of economic policies upon the economy, and act based on my judgment of the best economic policy possible.
The future of the Federal Reserve, the president looking to overhaul Washington's monetary establishment, and his first major appointment getting his day in front of the Senate Banking Committee. Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Dagan McDowell, along with my co-hosts, David Asman, Brian Brimberg, Jackie DeAngelis, and with us for this hour, Azoria CEO and Incubate Debate founder, James Fishback. Stephen Miran, President Trump's pick for the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, pledging central bank independence at his Senate confirmation hearing. And Miran is calling for interest rate cuts. Now joining a chorus who say the Fed risks choking the economy to recession if it waits any longer. But looming over all of this, the drama around Lisa Cook. She's still on the board, although President Trump has fired her, but she is fighting to keep her seat. Now, the Department of Justice has begun issuing subpoenas and opened a criminal investigation. As Larry Kudlow put it on this show yesterday, Cook is already cooked.
When the jobs report comes out on Friday, let's hope the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, subtracts one government job, namely the former Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook. She was fired by her boss, President Donald J. Trump, even though, for some reason, she refuses to accept this.
Investors also watching closely because who sits at that Fed table when it meets less than 2 weeks from now determines whether interest rates fall in time to keep growth humming and whether politics will stall the economy's next big chapter. James, to you first on this. Quite frankly, if the government wanted lower interest rates, all they'd have to do is just spend less and reduce bond issuance. So I'm very concerned about this fixation on our central bank because it's really the central bank over the years that's gotten us into all these problems, juicing the economy and then bailing people out when the shinola hits the fan.
That is exactly right, Dagan. There is not a problem the Federal Reserve has actually preemptively, proactively solved in the American economy. They caused the housing bubble. They missed the boat. On Wells Fargo. They fell asleep at the wheel on Silicon Valley Bank. Now Lisa Cook, who's been credibly accused of mortgage fraud, wants us all to believe she can stay in a seat, Dagan, to stop mortgage fraud. Bill Pulte has said this time and again. This type of mortgage fraud undermines mortgage origination. We call it at Azoria the Lisa Cook tax. We did the math on this, Dagan. Because of the owner occupancy fraud that Lisa Cook committed, if you were to eliminate all of that in the entire housing market, you would actually lower mortgage rates by 14 basis points. That might not sound like a lot, but that's $17,000 over the life of a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. So to your point, I think the Federal Reserve gets far too much credit on the way up and far too little accountability on the way down. I wish we could stop talking about it, but I'm glad that the president has removed her. And make no mistake, she is fired. Larry is right.
Well, she's still sitting there, and I'm kind of waiting to see if she's at the meeting next week. We don't have a clip of it. I know that Elizabeth Warren sits on the committee that is interrogating RFK Jr. today. I think she's questioning him right now. But she also sits on the banking committee, and it's high comedy that EWASI went after Vice Chair Richard Clarida and also Kaplan and Rosengren about trading and essentially forced Clarida to resign. And then where is she on this Lisa Cook issue? Anyone? Jump ball.
Well, she's on the side of the partisan Lisa Cook, because the partisan Lisa Cook is who she likes to have on the independent Fed. She cares about an independent Fed as long as it's independent from anybody who thinks in a free market conservative way, potentially. The wheels of justice are turning for Cook, and I think that should happen. You got the criminal referral. I think she ought to have due process, and she's going to get it, and hopefully very quickly. And she will, if these claims are credible, then I think she'll be moved along and the president will have the cause that everyone debates. But I love how the Stephen Miran thing, all the critics of the president say, well, Stephen Miran, he's just there to turn the Fed into a tool of the president. And Stephen Miran, I think, he's already gone up there and he's basically said, I'm here to be exactly what I ought to be, an independent voice on this panel, and I'm going to look at economic data and I'm going to make decisions based on that. And that diffuses all of the criticism. I think he's in favor of lower interest rates. Lots of smart people are, and they have good reason for it. So the Fed, to me right now, and this is why markets don't care, it's much ado about nothing when it comes to all the critics who say the Trump administration is ruining the Fed. No, they're not. In fact, they might actually make it better and make it operate more like the Fed is supposed to operate.
By the way, you are supposed to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. That is the standard that most politicians, including, as you mentioned, Elizabeth Warren herself, who back in not too long ago, 2022, 3 years ago, talked about Fed officials making, and I'm quoting her, making a mockery of ethics. Mm-hmm. The central bank is a culture of corruption. That is Elizabeth Warren. That she used to be concerned about the appearance of impropriety. At the very least, she can step aside until this issue is resolved. She can put herself in a pause pattern of the Fed. If she comes in and votes 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks from today on this really critical interest rate decision that they've got to make. This could turn the economy one way or the other. It's really that significant. If she is voting in that, she makes a mockery of the words of Elizabeth Warren.
That's right. And
she's going to vote in it, don't you think? She's going to show up and vote. I think she is.
I don't know.
I don't know
what are they.
Is Jay Powell going to put a sentry at the door? Like, should he put a sentry at the door?
It'll be
very interesting.
To the Federal Reserve.
Well,
it's happened before where people have stepped down for improprieties, not as significant as this one.
Correct. Not a criminal referral.
Well, Clarida, Kaplan, it was questions about trading.
Yeah.
But there are 2 Republican senators at least who have said they will not consider a replacement for Governor Lisa Cook until her lawsuit challenging her firing by President Donald Trump is resolved.
Right. And I don't think resolution is the determining factor, so I don't agree with them. I think in the interim, while you're investigating something, while the DOJ is now looking into it in a criminal investigation, that, a suspension at least or the firing should stand. How could somebody who's being investigated for that still be able to serve in that seat? And the fact that she's being defiant about it, and the fact we're talking about, is she going to show up and try to vote? They talk about Trump being disrespectful and not doing what he's supposed to do when it comes to the other side, or considering the Fed's independence. But her not respecting the system, as far as the left is concerned, is completely fine. And I bet you they're urging her to show up and try to vote.
Guaranteed.
And see what happens. I bet you it's going to be a total spectacle. But I also just want to talk about the independence in general, because I love looking at how the other outlets are characterizing what's happening with the Fed right now. CNBC, here's what it really means for Trump to get control of the Federal Reserve Board. The Harvard Kennedy School, the end of the Federal Reserve as we know it, question mark. CNN.
Question mark.
Trump backs off earlier claims that he should directly control interest rates. He's allowed to have a voice, and he's allowed to say that he thinks interest rates should be lower. He is also allowed to support Stephen Miran as a Fed governor and put him up there as a nominee and say there should be many voices that are determining, with the Fed's independence, what happens with interest rates. It can't just be one-sided, that you have people like Lisa Cook who are deciding what happens with the economy. And so I laugh at the way they attack him whenever he wants freedom of speech. He's allowed to say what he thinks.
That's right.
In the filing, the initial lawsuit, and you mentioned what came out yesterday, that her legal team is alleging that the Biden administration, when they put her up for nomination, were fully aware of these mortgage applications. Again, she was hoarding real estate with the best of them, but they said that her firing would cause irreparable harm to the U.S. economy, and that the short-term this is what Abby Lowell wrote. The short-term political interests of a president often clash with sound monetary policy. What in the high heavens are these people even talking about?
I mean, that's a good one, even for Abby Lowell. And he's come out with some pretty,
Yeah.
He's known to create
crazy
some,
arguments.
Yeah, he's known to
That's a
create
good
some
one.
circuses. He likes circuses. He did it with Hunter Biden. It's going to happen with Lisa Cook. There's going to be a circus at the Federal Reserve with her
Irreparable
vote,
harm.
and I think it'll actually backfire on her and her supporters.
Yeah.
The only thing I would push back on is
Sure.
it's related to, and it was my first comment, is that the economy is in peril if the Federal Reserve doesn't cut. It's just this utter fixation on the central bank in the markets and in discussion that everything revolves around our monetary policy and not our fiscal policy.
Well, I have to, I'll push back a little bit. I agree with you in general over the long term, but I started with the Wall Street Journal in 1983. The one thing I learned that markets, I mean, right now the markets are betting that there is going to be an interest rate cut, even if Lisa Cook is there. You see what's happening there. Short term, markets, investors have this knee-jerk reaction to the cuts or the increases of rates on Federal Reserve. I mean, that's the one thing that is consistent, has been consistent for the past 4 decades that I've been covering. So the bottom line is the markets right now are kind of taking it in stride, as you were saying, Brian. And I would just say one other thing about the propriety of all this. You're right, there have been a couple of people who've stepped down because of trading issues. What Liz Warren was talking about when she talked about the culture of corruption at the Fed was James Bullard, who at that time was president of the St. Louis Federal Reserve, giving an unpaid speech to a group of investors. An unpaid speech was considered enough for Elizabeth Warren back then to call a culture of corruption. If this isn't what she has done and what we have seen with our own eyes, at least suspicious in terms of corruption, I don't know what is.
I think it's corrupt that the Fed acts as economic FEMA. I want that to end.
That's right.
That's a great way to put it.